All right, all right. Hey, everybody. This is Nicholas Salter, host of the Keep It Real podcast with yours truly. So today, kind of doing something a little different, kind of recording from my phone, kind of more of a impromptu episode here. It's kind of going from audio only, as I'm currently in my pajamas, and it's a little bit later at night, so not really in the mood to be on camera, if I'm being transparent. But yeah, I just want to kind of go over some life updates and again some things that I might have kind of picked up from what I've read, from what I've learned, and what I've kind of experienced in my own personal life to share with you all to hopefully provide some additional insight and maybe kind of help out if you're in similar circumstances that I'm in. So kind of going over it today will be the topic of, rejection, dealing with rejection as well as being rejected yourself, neither of which is fun to do unless you're some kind of masochist, which I guess some people might be into that. But for me personally, no, I don't like it on either side of the fence. And the reason why we're kind of going over this topic today, and if I'm sounding a little bit not as my usually uplifting self as usual, is because I have been romantically rejected recently myself. I'm going to keep details very, not going into too deep with it because trying to keep people's identities and stuff like that under wraps. But um, yeah, it's been hard. Um, because I, for one, am trying to put myself back out there after the end of my last relationship a couple months ago. And it's like I've been going on a couple dates and things like that, and kind of meet a couple cool people. I go country dancing for those that don't know. So primarily from the girls I date, that's typically where I meet them from. And a lot of them, I mean, they're great. I mean, there's not really anything that's like they're not terrible people, you know. So I don't really go after anyone that's like has like objectively bad personality flaws or like objectively just awful human character traits. Typically, I go after people that are pretty decent. I like to believe. So, but that doesn't necessarily mean that just because they're good, decent people that we're compatible, right? And I think that's the hard part through all this is trying to be able to hang in there when things don't necessarily pan out my way, whether I'm the one doing the rejecting or being rejected. So basically, I went out on dates with a couple different ladies. Like I said, they were nice and nothing really like objectively wrong with their personality, but I just didn't feel that sense of that real strong sense of attraction, you know. And I just I know I have a habit, and I've been told this by my friends and family that I can sometimes go for partners where I kind of settle, or at least from their perspective, I go for partners that might be a little bit, lower than like the partners that I kind of should go after, kind of deal. Which when I first heard that, I was totally fucking offended. I was like, "Wow, okay, thanks for that." But thinking about it more deeply, it's like it's not necessarily that they're unattractive because I mean I think they are. A lot of them are objectively, but it's like the in terms of their personality, how they have their lives together, how they carry themselves, how they treat themselves and other people. It's like that kind of thing where it's like, it's they're okay, but Nick, it's like one of those things you can do a little better. And reflecting on that, I think they are right. Um, and kind of going into another part of this whole conversation, there's something called the Big Five personality profile, um, which is basically a personality assessment, but this one's actually based in like clinical psychology. This is the one where it's actually scientifically backed. So if there is like a legitimate personality test out there that's not just kind of woo woo, this would be it. And I took one recently, and um, I actually took one before about 5 years ago, back late college or kind of closer after I graduated. Um, and now I took it again, just kind of see where I stand. And it's about the same. There's been like some minor changes, but it's about the same, which is interesting to see. Because from what I've read and researched, is that the big five personality, like that's what you get is kind of who you are. That doesn't really change too much. So if you want to take that assessment, it's free online. It can kind of give you a good gauge on how on your key personality traits. So basically, openness to experience, and then neuroticism, and then introversion, extroversion. What else? What else was there? Get my notes pulled up here. There's something else. Then, yep, agreeableness and then conscientiousness. So agreeableness saying basically like, what level of people pleaser or people displeaser that you may be. And then conscientiousness going over how organized you are as a person, or you very just kind of like throw your clothes all over the room kind of deal, just like kind of how you organize yourself in your life or lack thereof. And so looking at my lovely results here, I'm basically about average for introversion and extroversion. I'm about 37%, 37% percentile in extroversion. So, which means I lean more towards introvert, but I can be kind of extroverted if I kind of need to be, which, yeah, that kind of lines up with my personal experience to where I feel like, hell, even like in club or going out settings, like I can be extroverted for like a short period of time or even like for my job, but eventually after like a few hours, I definitely need like my cool down time, my own personal space to kind of recharge my batteries. Like it is definitely short lived. I noticed this on like vacations I have like with my friends or like my family. Like after about 3 days, maybe even 4 days, I'm kind of over it and I kind of want some more me time to myself again. Like I just kind of like I definitely need my personal time to recharge. And then emotional stability or neuroticism, that's about 34% percentile. So again, it's about a little on the higher end, meaning that I am a little bit more on the neurotic side of things. Um, which yeah, that lines up. Then agreeableness, 80 percentile, meaning that I am very agreeable, which that lines up because I do like to be well liked and perceived in a positive manner. I don't like rejecting people or saying no or setting firm boundaries, which that's definitely been something I've actively had to try to learn and incorporate into my own life. Especially I've noticed since my college years and even these last few years that I've been out of college, is like it's something that like it's a skill I've been trying to purposely work on, and it's a challenge. It's definitely it's not easy. This is something I have to put a lot of conscious effort towards to make sure that I'm treating myself with due respect and having others treat myself with the same respect. It takes a lot of effort. And then intelligent, an intellect or imagination or openness to experience. I also rank pretty high on that, meaning that I am pretty, imaginative person, thinking about the different possibilities. My brain's always thinking, always kind of innovating or creating or just like postulating. I'm always thinking. That's just who I am. So I always come up with different ideas or different things to talk about or different concepts or um yeah, just different things floating around in my mind. I mean, my mind's always active. um, and then conscientiousness, yep, pretty conscientious, about a little higher than average, but not by much. So yeah, I think I like to think myself I'm pretty orderly. Like I like having a plan and structure and like a schedule to buy my time by. And like I'll adjust that schedule as needed, but typically I like to kind of, keep things on rails for the most part. It helps me it helps out my neuroticism by being able to plan out my life and things like that, knowing that I kind of have an idea of where I'm going. Kind of helps me freak out a little bit less. But I say all this is to say is that kind of going over these results, it kind of helped me realize that, you know, our personality, it does kind of change as we get older over time. Kind of watched the video like Mark Manson kind of released recently, where he kind of went over kind of personality tests and how, which is crazy. 'Cause I talk about personality tests a lot on this podcast. And he says that we got to be careful with these tests because they have a habit of kind of putting people in boxes and kind of disavowing a lot of our personal human experience that we have, and that a lot of this stuff kind of comes from our own nature, our own genetics, as well as our own nurture, like how we were raised, and our parental environments and the people that we interacted with, how that can kind of shape us as individuals. So it's really hard for a human experience to be encapsulated in just a few categories on any of these tests. But he talked about how especially using the big five, which is the most scientifically backed one, which is why I pulled it up initially in the first place to kind of take it again to see where I stand. He said this is about where you're going to be, like the big five. Like it might change a little bit over time to where you might become less neurotic as you get older, a little bit maybe less agreeable or more agreeable as you get older, depending on where you started from. Like so, it might kind of change slightly, like a few percentage points as you get older and get more life experience. But around where you are is around where you are, um, which is kind of relieving, but also kind of like, ah, man, like I kind of knew that, but I was kind of hoping that there might be some way I can kind of hijack my personality some way. Because I've always kind of admired people that are able to kind of speak their mind and kind of be alive and vivacious and extroverted, which I can be in the right environment around the right group of people. But again, it's very short lived. And as soon as I catch an inkling that someone's not having a good time, or like I'm kind of being very off putting or kind of dickish, like I tone it back like immediately. Like I can't help myself. Like I choose to try to maintain the harmony of the group than um I guess the well-being of myself as an individual, right? Which is not always a great thing. But but that is to say is that when Mark Manson talked about it on the podcast, it made me kind of reflect on the fact of like, if this is where I stand with my test, this is how I've always kind of been. And chances are this is how I'll probably likely be in the future. And to bring this back around full circle is that, yeah, I've always had a tough time dealing with rejection myself personally, because I do take it personal, because I do want to be well liked by people. And I try to work hard to achieve that. And so when that doesn't happen, I take it personally. And so this is one of those cases where I kind of took this one personally. I always do, but it's just this one's kind of got to me because I'm trying to do a better job of going after, I guess you could say, higher value individuals, quote unquote, or ones that might be, I guess, a little bit more on my level. Not to sound like an arrogant prick. Um, but even then, it's like it's still a kick in the teeth whenever you have to try to talk to them. It's like my neuroticism still comes up. I'm still shy, and even though I've been going out dancing for like the last 5 years now, and going out to random strangers and asking them to dance, and then trying to flirt with them and all that stuff, it's still fucking hard and challenging and scares me shitless. It just does, and that has not really changed much. Like I've gotten better at it to where now it's like I don't let the fear paralyze me, but the fear is still there. And I feel like it's still pretty strong, maybe 75% of the strength it was like when I first started dancing and stuff, but it's still like 75% there. Like the fear hasn't really gone away too much. And so that's the shitty part about it is that like it's I'm me trying to branch out and put myself out there and be vulnerable, I feel like it's just gonna be a lifelong challenge for me, which is unfortunate. Um it's not it's not the fact it can't be overcome to where I won't be able to achieve my own personal goals, but it's just like this is something that likely I'm gonna have to deal with for the long term, if not the rest of my life, which is unfortunate. But I mean, we are who we are. And I think with the real peace that comes is from us being able to accept the people that we are and not trying to change us into something that we're not. So I'm probably never going to be the big loudmouth dude in the room, at least not consistently, because I just don't think that fits my personality profile very well. Because it takes a lot of energy for me to do that. I don't get energy from that, so it's something that's just going to have to a part of myself that I'm just going to have to be trying to accept. But yeah, it's been a little tough. It's been a little tough. I will say that. But I think that I it's important that I keep trying to go after what I want, because if I don't, then I feel like I'm just gonna kind of end up lost and nihilistic and bitter anyway, which I am wholly against. Um, and I think the best way for me to navigate moving forward would be just to take information of where I am now, my personality, and just try to make peace with that and navigate the dating landscape and navigate my own personal life, my work life, and all that using what I know now. To where it's just like, yeah, I'm probably a little bit more on the shyer side. I can be more extroverted with more energy if I need to be, but I can use my intellect and my creativity to come up with solutions, effective solutions to problems of myself and the problems that other people have to make myself more effective, and hopefully by being able to institute those solutions, help kind of drive down my neuroticism kind of deal. And I can utilize my intelligence alongside my conscientiousness to help create a structure and order and balance to my life, to where even though I have these challenges like trying to face rejection, I can figure out ways to kind of optimize my effectiveness and then be able to move forward. But um yeah, so basically, I've had to endure rejection, but not only that, I had to reject a couple people that I did see that I just feel like I wasn't having a good, strong connection or physical attraction with, and that was challenging too. I had to use fucking AI to try to help me draft a message to try to help break the news to them, because again, I just don't like doing it. Like I don't feel like I'm put on this planet to hurt people or hurt people's feelings. So when I'm put in that position where I kind of have to do that in order to sever a relationship, it stings. And I had this guilt and I feel like a dick and it sucks. Um, but then I've also had relationships before in the past to where I stuck around for too long because I was afraid of breaking up with the person, or I had this scarcity mindset to where I thought that if I didn't break up with this individual, if I did, then I wouldn't be able to find another person like them or as good as them. So it's like I basically psychologically trapped myself in that relationship. And then the relationship eroded over time from resentment on both parties because I didn't want to be in it, but I felt obligated to be in it, and the other person could probably pick up on that, and then kind of start driving a wedge between us. I think this happened back in my relationship back in college, essentially, and maybe even my relationship now these past few months ago. Um, which again, it's tough to admit the fact of like I have a harder time ending things when I should, and that is part of the nice guy syndrome. That is part of the lingering, people pleasing thing, to where it's like people pleasers have a hard time calling things off when they need to be called off. Just because you just feel like that any relationship you have is almost a gift because of the low self worth kind of thing. So we're not in position to negotiate or have any leverage to ask for what we want. So therefore, we take what we're given, even if it's less than what we deserve, which is not good. And so part of the growth would be being able to sever relationships that no longer serve you in an effort to get you what you do deserve, and also what the other person deserves too. Because no one, you shouldn't be in a relationship with someone to where like you feel like you're second place, or that you're their second choice, or you don't want everyone else to, you don't want them to feel like, you don't want to make them feel like that they are a second place or they're the second option. Like that's shitty. No one wants to be the second best pick in a relationship. You should be the first. Um, so it's challenging. It's tough, but I think this is one of those things where part of growing up is being able to recognize your weaknesses and make the hard call when it needs to be made, and be able to execute that, and be honest and be compassionate, be forthcoming, but still be able to get it done. Hell, even when I was like a loan officer supervisor at my other job, like a few years back, I had a hard time with the concept of being able to let go of members of my team that weren't performing that well, because I thought that if they weren't performing well, A, it's my fault, which there might be some truth to that. And then B, it's like I feel like I'd be an asshole, like I let them down. But at the same time, it's like if they're not performing the way they should, then that may not be the best role for them. And maybe the best thing you can do for both the company, and your team, and for them, would be to let them go, let them find a better role that's more suited for them, that's more suited to their strengths. And then you can find people that can better serve the company and help better serve your leadership style. It's like, it's, I feel like part of growing up is being able to make the hard decisions. And that's where the whole high agreeableness thing kind of kicks me in the ass, is that it's hard to make those hard decisions. And it's something that I feel like as I'm growing up and stepping into my own masculinity, I've been trying to do a better job of coping with. I mean, hell, I also learned about numerology, which is something I didn't know fucking existed, which is like another personality test kind of thing. It's not really a test. It's more like it's just more of painting out what your life paths are, what they look like. Basically, going over like, I'm not going into all the details of it, but what you would do is like you kind of take your birth date, you add up the numbers in your birth date in a certain sequence, Um, and then after you add it up in that sequence, you should get like a single or in some cases a double digit number. And then that number would be what's considered your life path. And then they're basically, depending on which number you have a different path that's appropriate for you. So when you add up my birthday together in sequence, I get the life path of number nine, which life paths nine, they are known as the humanitarians. Um, Basically they're kind of here to kind of close the loop, the cycle of life. They kind of combine all the collective experiences from past numbers. All this sounds very woo woo, definitely not scientifically backed as the big five personality is. So if you got to pick one personality test out of all these, like the fucking enneagram, mbti, numerology, zodiac science, all this other stuff, definitely go with the big five. That's one's actually has science for that. So if you want to actually make adjustments, like good adjustments on your life based on what you should do, based on scientific fact, take the big five personality test. The other ones, they're good to have like a pretty decent insight about yourself. I think they've been helpful for me, but you shouldn't also like hold on to them. Like take it with a grain of salt, like you could be wrong about your own assessment. And you don't want to scope out your whole life based on uh an improperly perceived test that you took, and then you end up doing yourself a disservice instead of just doing your own life as you would have without taking those tests, right? But point being said, with this life path, it talks about how that not life path nines are here to essentially try to help develop people, make the world a better place, kind of serve the world essentially, which is spooky because I feel like every other test I've essentially taken has essentially said the same thing. Zodiac signs basically said the same thing. MBTI said the same thing. Enneagram essentially said the same thing. If I'm on my growth path for that, hell, even my own fucking name, Nicholas, the etymology of it is like victor of people, like champion of the people, essentially. So it's like even my own name is about just trying to do right by the people and help elevating them for the sake of the collective. So I mean, it's just no matter where I turn, that's just who I am, apparently. But it did say the big weakness with Life Path Nine, like we're very adaptable people. We're very like we're very go-getters, right? But the issue is that we also have a hard time letting things go. And that really spoke to me too, because I was like, yeah, I do have a hard time letting things go or being able to move forward. Like, I had a hard time moving on from my childhood home, had a hard time switching high schools, hard time trying to accept being in the Corps of Cadets at A&M because that was fucking challenging. Um, had a hard time with my first job out of college, trying to learn how to be a good salesman, like and learning how to take rejection over the phone. That also fucking sucked. Jesus. So it's yeah, I've always had a hard time trying to move forward and let things go because I like to hold on to the comfortability of the past and what I know, right? And even then, sometimes I just kind of get sentimental, like you don't want to let go of old friends, you don't want to let go of relationships, right? Where you feel like you really like the other person or you've grown with the other person. You don't want to leave jobs you felt that served you well, and I just feel like that they said that for life past nines, that's going to be your biggest thing you have to learn in this life is learning how to let things end and bring things to a conclusion when it's time. And yeah, I feel like I've always had difficulty just trying to put a closing chapter on things. And so it makes sense that, like, combined with my high level of agreeableness, combined with my life path nine nature, that it's hard for me to end things. So it's like I really have to work overtime to build up the strength of courage to cut things off and have faith that things will work out better in the future if I were to kind of put myself first and draw boundaries and be able to let people go that I feel like no longer serve me. Um, and it's hard because I'm basically making a bet that I am worthy enough to make that call for myself and have to have faith that hopefully I'm right. I could be wrong, but I have to bet on myself and try to do what's best for me in the long run. And so I mean, so these tests, like, they may not always be 100% correct. I think it's still good for insight about yourself or weaknesses that you may not know about. And that, yeah, and you might find out some things where it's like, it's always kind of been staring you in the face, but you didn't really know how to articulate it or put it into words until the test kind of points it out for you. But learning about that really kind of put things in perspective to where it's like, yeah, I think part of growing up and, being a man and trying to be a man of integrity, trying to be one of honor, you have to be able to let things go. and be able to have a certain level of detachment to things. I actually watched this video with like Dr. Ryan Teraband, kind of like he's like a therapist dating guy online. I think he's very insightful. I think he's very intelligent, but I also think he's kind of very kind of red pill adjacent. So like if you're very abhorrent to that stuff, just be warned. But I do think it's good for guys to get a little bit insight from different sources, and then they kind of come up with their own opinions on the matter and with their own thoughts and ways to navigate life. Like listen to everybody and take what's useful and leave behind what is not. But basically, what Dr. Ryan Terabin said was that there's this thing in attachment theory that was created, which I've actually made videos on, which is very helpful. But he said attachment theory was mainly developed through working with women, essentially. That not really a lot of men were taken into account when they kind of put these studies on attachment together, meaning that basically our view of attachment is very focused from a woman's perspective or a woman's lived experience, and not necessarily a lot of men's lived experience. Even though I do think that a lot of attachment theory can apply to men. Orion Terabin, the Dr. Ryan Terabin's argument was that what if men's thing was that we're not supposed to attach as much. Now, this is where I have to very be careful what I say, can make sure I have a lot of nuance here, because guys might take the ball and run with that and say, "Oh, that means we get to be, emotionless robots and just, not be attached to anything and not feel anything." No, you still feel, but I think Dr. Terabin's point was that, like, I think the point is that women connect to men differently than men connect to women, and that's okay. And we shouldn't try to put the same level of expectations how a woman connects to men, how a man connects to a woman, and that maybe how men love is being able to, love when we can, but be able to have a healthy distance enough from that other person or from that thing that we love. So that way, if anything were to happen to it, it won't like be devastating and it won't crush us. Like part of a man's strength might come from the fact he can be a little bit more detached when necessary in order to get the job done. Right. Which sounds a little cold, like a little clinical, but I think there's some truth to it there, to where I think a lot, at least for what I believe, is that women do like it when men have the strength to endure challenging circumstances. But part of that strength to endure challenging circumstances is the fact that he's a little bit more emotionally detached from those circumstances and can focus on what's objectively true, on what's objectively there, and just working with the facts of the matter in order to problem solve and create a solution that can be implemented in order to eradicate the problem. Which again sounds kind of clinical, but having that level of separation from the issue allows us to be more objective in solving it, essentially. So basically, having a certain level of detachment is a good thing. And one thing that Dr. Caravan said was that even the great Buddha and Buddhist philosophy, um, or religion, they were they essentially wanted people to recognize that attachment really does mean suffering. Like the greatest form of suffering comes from being too attached to things, too attached to money, too attached to status, too attached to love, too attached to life, essentially. And that to be too attached means that you're trying to control something that you fundamentally can't, that you may have influence over, but you can't control. Like kind of close to elements of stoicism, which, sorry, I know I'm kind of bouncing all over the board here across different philosophies, but I'm bouncing across all these different philosophies and personality tests to kind of point out one congruent line, a pattern, which is one of basically a healthy level of detachment is good. And in fact, it might be necessary in order to endure the pain and challenges of life, the rejection that you will inevitably face, or the rejection that you will have to make and put on others, um, in order to navigate it, in order to make sure that you maintain a healthy level of autonomy, essentially. And his argument was that healthy men have a healthy level of detachment with their loved ones or to life that allows them to be effective and objective, and actually allows room for love because they're not smothering the other person, or they're not overly attached to an outcome that again they don't have absolute control over. Like for example, a job. Like you might there might be a case where you're at a job to where you have to be able to let that job go in order to seek another job or another career path that might pay you more, that might serve your skill set better. Um, that might just kind of put you on a better path in life where you want to go. But that would require you to be able to let go of your old work friends, of your old routines, your old habits, your old commute. It's like you have to be able to let go of what's old and what's comfortable in order to, for the sake of what's new. And if you're too attached to what you used to know, you won't be able to step away from it and grow and develop as a person. You'll just kind of be stuck in a rut, essentially, which I think happens to a lot of people, and especially what's happening to a lot of men nowadays, is that there's a lot of men that are so focused on comfortability and trying to avoid discomfort that they can't grow as people, and then they stay stagnant for the rest of their lives, which I don't think that's the best path to take. And as part of the degradation that we're seeing in the world today is a people not really taking their personal responsibility and trying to move forward in their lives despite the fear that they feel, right? Because we can't always operate based on how we feel. Sometimes we have to do objectively what's best despite our feelings, which is part of masculinity, which is part of healthy detachment, which is part of my own life path as an individual. For me personally, is being able to emotionally let things go that no longer serve me so I can grow as a person, even when it hurts and it sucks. But I, if I don't do that, if I'm not willing to do that, then I'll basically be accepting things in life that I shouldn't accept, which will make my life worse and minimize the potential impact that I could have on the world, which will essentially make the world less good of a place it could have been if I had faith and stepped out and took the risk that I was afraid to take. So yeah, it's a lot, and this is part of the reason why I made this podcast. Basically, was to not just only talk about things in my life where I went well to where like I got a house, I got my degree, hell I just bought like a new truck recently, which I fucking love, by the way. It's awesome. 2025 Tacoma, and it is so great. Um, but life is not all upsides, and I feel like especially in social media, we have a habit of just showing our times when our life goes well, and we don't do a great job of showing where our life doesn't go well and when we take losses and when things don't go our way, which for me, romantically, that's happened to me recently, and it sucks. And I mean, I wish things were different, but they're not. But I have to be responsible and objective with my own platform and have to be honest the fact of I am a human being and I'm not speaking from some ivory tower to where I'm better than everybody else, is that I'm going through the trenches and going through these life experiences and these development challenges in my later 20s now, like a lot of other people are doing. And it's tough, and I had to make decisions that are hard that I don't know how they're necessarily going to turn out. But for the sake of what I believe is right, and for what I sake of what's good for my development, I have to be able to take the risk on and bet on myself and move forward despite my fear. I think that's we have two choices in life, and that's faith or fear. And you act on fear, that's the kind of life that you'll get. If you act on faith, then who knows what you might get. So I think I just wanted to bring this to everybody so that way they know that if you're also going through a difficult time or circumstance where you might feel rejected, dejected, things aren't going your way, bills aren't being paid, you're getting behind, your relationship status isn't what you want it to be. You feel like you're not as close to your friends as you want to be or your family, whatever the case may be. I just want you to know that you're not going through difficult circumstances alone, but I do believe that things will get better as long as we keep the path and keep trying to grow as individuals. And, be transparent when things aren't going so hot and be able to ask for help when you need it. I know I've reached out to loved ones or talked to my friends about this stuff because, I'm not an island. Even Nick Salter needs help too sometimes. So I've learned in these last few years to be able to ask for help when things start getting bad for me. And like I said, I'm still in therapy too, and I talk about this stuff. And we come up with a game plan for me to kind of help navigate and move forward and get myself out there on the horse, and keep moving forward towards my goals and what I want to accomplish. So there is no mountaintops without the valleys, and the valleys, they don't last forever. We just have to bear and grit through the season and keep moving forward. And if we keep doing that, eventually we'll reach the peak of where we're trying to get to, little by little. It may not happen necessarily when we want it to, but I believe that it will happen. So that's yeah, I know I kind of covered a lot here today. I know kind of solo on this episode. But I don't want to run too long because I don't want to get too too monologue. I feel like Hamlet over here. But I just wanted to kind of go over some of these topics. So look into the Big Five personality test. Look into numerology, even though the Big Five is definitely more scientifically backed than numerology is. But taking these different tests, I feel like if you take a lot of them, you should start seeing a reoccurring pattern of the kind of individual that you are in life. But I think it's important because that can help you navigate your life through knowing your strengths of what you can offer and knowing your weaknesses and where you might need additional support from. I was actually, even just one last thing. I was kind of talking to my dad the other day, and he talked about how he believes that for individuals, every individual has a unique life challenge that they have to kind of deal with and kind of overcome. Basically, kind of similar to the life path stuff I just talked about. Um, to where it's like so for some people, money may not be a problem to them, friendship may not be a problem to them, their job may not be a problem for them, but they may always have a problem like with their family or something, or they may always have a problem with romance. Um, and that, for that specific aspect of your life that's meant to be your life challenge, that will essentially be an uphill battle. And that will always kind of be something that you'll have to put extra effort towards. That will always be somewhat of a challenge. I think for my dad, for him, he said it was more his relationship with his family. That was kind of his life challenge that he has to continuously deal with. Um, he's had money. He's always had a couple jobs. He's always been a hard worker. He's always had like a good kind of romantic partner in his life to kind of help him through. But in his for his friends and family, I feel like that's always kind of been more of a weak spot, or like there's been a spot of a lot of tumultuous relationships for him in his personal life. And he pointed out, he brought this up because we were kind of talking about how my dating life is going. And he mentioned that, yeah, Nick, just something that you might need to consider is that maybe what you're going like what you're going through right now is your life challenge kind of making itself manifest. Like, I've never really had problems going through school. Like, I might have had a hard class here and there, but I've always been a pretty smart kid, smart dude. I was able to figure it out. I feel like I never really had to struggle financially in my life, yet, knock on wood. So that's kind of worked out for me for the most part. I've always had a good set of friends and people that cared about me, but the one area of my life I've always struggled has always kind of been romance and dating and stuff like that. This has always been kind of like a pain point for me personally, which sucks. I also feel like this is part of my life that I've almost kind of put the most intentional, conscious effort towards. And yet I feel like I've almost kind of gotten the lowest rate of return out of it, ironically enough. Maybe that means that if I stop focusing on it so much, it might work itself out. Could be true. Um, or maybe that means that how I grow as a person is by me going through these challenges I'm going through romantically now. And that's going to mold me and reinforce me to the person that I'm meant to be, to where I can actually help out other people going through a similar circumstance, where this is just part of my development as a person to where I can help others. So, regardless of what the case may be, it is a challenge nonetheless. And he just said, like, Nick, you may just have to accept that this may be an aspect of your life that you're just always going to have to work at. That's always going to be a little bit challenging. That you're just going to have to kind of keep the lid on it, and just kind of keep that in mind that this is going to be a sore spot for you. Um, which again is it's not the most encouraging thing to hear, but I do think there's an element of truth to it, to where it's like I feel like everyone has their own personal challenge or leviathan in their life that they have to overcome somehow. Um, and part of your life path and what you're here for is to figure out a way to kind of overcome it or deal with it. And so I think this just might be mine, is the element of romance. And for my dad, it was dealing with his family. And for you, it could be also romance, or it could be financial, or it could be trying to find your life's mission, like whatever the case may be. There might be something to where it's always been a little hard to deal with this aspect of your life, but that might be purposeful because that might be where most of your growth will come from. So it may not necessarily be a burden. It's just what you're built to contend with. And that will bear fruit that might be good for you and then good for the rest of the world and people around you once you are able to contend with it. So just food for thought. Um, but yeah, I think that's kind of all I wanted to cover. But I think there's always going to be low parts in life that are unavoidable, but it doesn't mean that we can take the foot off the gas pedal and let those low points in our life define us. We can choose to let how we get up and how we choose to push forward define us instead. And I think that's exactly what we should focus on. So, yeah, but that'd be it. Kind of wrapping up this episode. Like always, I want to thank you all for listening. Let me know if you have any kind of topics that you want me to cover, any kind of ideas, any other kind of guests that you want me to have on the show. But otherwise, thank you for listening. Have a great week and keep it real. Thanks for listening.